Good day, it's TurboDave here at Performance Corner. Center diff. Today we're talking about all-wheel drive conversions. So, you've probably seen our Project CRX and seen what we have to do to get on it and everything. So generally speaking, it's a very costly endeavor just going all-wheel drive. Even if you already have an engine swapped into the car or you're doing a D-series all-wheel drive. Just going all-wheel drive itself, everything that encompasses it is expensive. It's like a $15,000 conversion. You know, you have to change the transmission, you have to add a drive shaft, change your shifters. A lot of times, because where the drive shaft is, you got to do some modifications there, depending on what you have, whether it's cable or the rods. You have a rear diff to put in. You have parts to buy. You have the rear wheel drive conversion. You know, all the parts, a ton of labor. You have new exhaust that has to get installed or made for the car because there's a drive shaft going through where your exhaust used to be. You know, so you can't just remove it and put it back in. Your diff now sits where your gas tank used to be. There's just a lot of components to this, you know. So a lot of guys end up running a fuel system, like a fuel cell in their hatch, you know, and that's one way to do it. But now you have, you know, taking away space. It's not a daily driver kind of car anymore. It's just a dedicated race car. So there's all these obstacles to tackle, you know, and so the financial part of it is very taxing, obviously. You have all these parts, and you have a few different kits to choose from. You know, we went with the Hub City. I like the way it bolts through the inside of the body, the way it bolts to the already existing subframe. And that's the other thing, is that you have this rear subframe that used to be, well, it's not a subframe in the sense that it's unboltable like a lot of subframes, but you have this part of the chassis that's part of the original bottom pan of the unibody, and now you got to cut away it, you know, in the middle of it to clearance the new brace and clearance actually the rear differential. With this center diff runs a drive shaft to the rear diff, and so you have to cut off part of that, fit it in there, and now you have this piece. And yes, it braces it, but there's also the part where the flat pan of the original chassis had tack welded this sub piece to it to hold the control arms, the suspension. So when you're under the car and you look underneath there, you can see there's a bunch of sheet metal that's bent to be this little subframe piece where the lower control arms bolt to and go out from there. And really that's all that part does. There's two little holes where the fuel tank have the straps go into. But other than that, it's really just that for those two lower control arms. Now, you cut into that, so there's a lot of pressure on that. You know, when you're turning, the pressure's going onto that little subframe. You have the new rear brace bracket for the differential, but you still have to think, the flat pan and this metal piece, it's only tack welded onto the main pan of the frame, or main pan of the car. So, you know, I'm going to weld all that on our project. And one of the reasons that I'm going to weld it is because I think it needs to be a little bit more stiffened, a little bit more than it was from the factory. They just use tack welds, and there's enough tack welds on there to hold just about anything you're going to do with it. I mean, really. But with the added power and torque of the rear diff, of the suspension being stiffer, when the drivetrain kicks in, it's going to torque on it. Even though the two big bolts go through the body, I mean, it's only 2 points where it's holding it, really. I just wanted to make sure that it's never gonna come apart. You know, never have anything happen to it. You can't predict everything, but I think that it's something, you know, added. It's an added security, if you would. But moreover, just getting this done, you know, it's about a 15, and it depends. If you do a K-series swap or a K series all-wheel drive or a B series. And then there's variables to that because the B series, some of the components don't hold as much horsepower and torque, and some of them have broke parts at very low horsepower, which means it's very low torque. We're talking about like 200 horsepower, braking parts. So it depends on what you get, which parts you use, and stuff like that. K-series swap is going to be a much tougher swap as far as components. The components are made to be beaten on a little bit more with that larger engine and more torque. So, and most people are going with the torque or with the K-series. But it's just before somebody gets into it and turns a project into a parting out sale, think about what you're getting into before you do it. Just because there's a lot of components. Even once you get if you buy the trans, you put the trans in, you need a different mount to mount the all-wheel drive trans than the two-wheel drive trans. It starts right there, and then it just goes back, and you have to have a drive shaft, and you need a CV, depending on what diff you use. You need a constant velocity, component in your drive shaft, or are you using a K20, CRV K series rear diff, and then it goes into that. And so it's almost, I don't want to say never ending, but there's a long, list of things that need to get done. And that includes an exhaust, a fuel system, outside of just getting the driveline components in the car and for the car, you know what I mean? There's a lot of labor intensive stuff that goes on too. So just want to spread the word, a lot of people are doing it, a lot of people ordering parts, and I think it's a great conversion. I think it makes it a lot faster, especially if you have a big engine or a lot of torque on the engine when you're leaving the line. It's really makes it a lot faster, a lot quicker than being two-wheel drive where you just spin tires. But it's also a lot of work, and so I don't want it to be as many as conversions as there are out there. I don't think many people are talking about what it really takes to get it all the way done. And it's a lot of work to get it all the way done. So if you're doing the car like we are, from start to finish, meaning we're putting a case swap, we got a roller that had other things done, that needed to be fixed, or that needed to be fixed. When you get a roller, you don't know what exactly is going to work or not work. So there's other things that go with that too, and then you have K series, or depending on what transmission, V8 B series transmission, it may not be a cable, so you need to convert it over to hydraulic. And depending on what you're using for hydraulic, depends on how much work goes into that also. So there's a lot of things that go in with a swap, but the all-wheel drive conversion is awesome. It's just, remember, it's going to be a lot of work to get into it and get it done. Thank you for joining us. This is TurboDave here at Performance Corner. We'll talk to you soon, and we'll keep you updated with our Project CRX. Take care. Thank you. Bye.